Thanks for joining us on the second episode of Brew Talk. I'm here with Aislin Henrickson of Wolfhead Distillery. She is here to talk to us about distilling rather than the beer that I was hoping to focus this podcast on. But you never know. Sometimes you got to spread your wings and find new people. So Aislin, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today, I'd like to start things off on Brew Talk. We can't talk without a brew. So we've got a lovely sponsorship today by Erie Street Gastropub. Has supplied us with a couple of beers that we can start off with. So if you want to start with a Pilsner, or we've got a sour from Sawdust City.
Let's start with the sour.
All right.
We can end with the Pilsner.
Very good. Donated from, again, our sponsor, Erie Street Gastropub. So today we will be giving a platform for Aislin to tell her story of who she is, why she is, and the whole point behind Brew Talk is to listen to everyone tell their story and give the people an idea of the crafters that craft their product.
And oh boy, is it a story.
Well, that's why we're here, to hear that story. So I guess we can start right from the beginning is why do you distill? What inspired you to get into distilling?
It was a little bit of a journey. So I've been in the bar industry since I was actually 18 years old. I actually don't know if you're allowed to get your smart serve at 18 anymore, but back in those days, we're not going to talk about ages here, but back in those days, we could get our smart serve and they did not expire. All the new ones expire.
Oh, okay, so grandmother.
Did.
We're not that old.
Yeah, so I started off just like pint slinging in like a little dive bar in Newmarket, Ontario.
Okay.
And it was an experience. I had a lot of fun and I kind of like found a passion for it. I'm like, okay, you know what? This is great, but like, I don't want to just do pints. Like I want to get into like the cocktail scene. I thought it was really cool, like watching all like the flair bartenders and stuff like that. So I started branching out, got into a Fox and Fiddle in Toronto, started working there. It was right across from York University, so there was a lot more,
Younger crowd,
a little more interesting drinks. It wasn't just, like the whiskey sours at the time where they didn't have egg whites. Oh my gosh, remember those days? So it kind of just kept progressing, and the more and more I bartended, the more I was like trying to evolve my skill set with that, and I ended up leaving bartending because at one point I was like, you know what, like this isn't a career choice. This is just making some money on the weekends. I want something that's going to be like a more fulfilling career. And then I tried to go into like an office job, very quickly realized, you know what, I miss bartending. So I got to get back into that.
They frown upon you when you drink during an office job too.
Darndest thing. Like, what's wrong with the 10 a.m. martinis? You see it on TV all the time. So yeah, I decided I wanted to get back into the bar industry, but I went into promotions instead. So I was actually with a marketing group around Toronto that would go out and do promos and like concerts and venues and stuff like that, doing like the Shots Girl thing, which if I am showing this to my parents, I'm not going to tell any stories about that one. So again, it just kept progressing.
Brew Talk after dark.
So yeah, it just kind of it was one of those things I just kept finding more and more that I wanted to do with it. I really started like curving my interest more directly to the higher end cocktails. And then I started entering competitions and getting really interested in that because I thought that was really cool because you get to kind of tell a story with each cocktail. It sounds really pretentious, but like whenever I craft a cocktail recipe, I kind of plan it around a story or a moment so that like people will taste it and they're like, you know what, it tastes exactly like if I had this, and this, or if I was at the beach or whatever it is. So started entering some competitions, started winning some competitions, which was even more exciting. But my problem was I kept trying to leave the bar industry as well. So like I went back to college a couple of times. I was moving around the country. Like I lived in Ottawa, I lived in Banff, and then it's a very windy road to get me to distilling. It was actually when I was living in Banff, I was working at the Fairmont Springs.
Okay.
The Banff Springs. And I was talking to some Irish guys that my friend and roommate at the time, Shannon, knew from the golf course. And they kept talking to me. They're like, you know what? Like, you would love Ireland. Like, you should go to Ireland. And I was like, you know what? I should go to Ireland. So I went.
That's a good idea. Right? My schedule's cleared this weekend. Off I
right?
go.
There's nothing else going on here. So I went home, applied to go to Ireland, and basically I packed up all my stuff from Banff, went back to Ottawa, got all my stuff together there, applied and left within 6 months.
Oh, wow.
moved to Ireland, pretty much blank slate. Shannon came with me, but she ended up going home. Unfortunately, like our friendship kind of dissolved with that. It is what it is. But while I was in Ireland, I started working at a bar called Sophie's, which was like very cocktail forward. It was a rooftop bar. It was beautiful. It was like the new hot thing. And that's where I realized everything that I learned in Canada up until that point was wrong. So I was like, wow, like everything, like the cocktail scene here is just unreal. Like at that time, I was like, a whiskey sour is bar lime and whiskey and sugar. And it was just awful compared to what they were doing in Ireland.
Right.
That's where I started learning about like egg whites and stuff. And I'm like, what have we been doing the last 20 years? That's when I found out Canada's basically stuck in 1993 when it comes to the bar industry. So I really grew and really exploded there. After I left Sophie's, I ended up taking a job at Lemwell's, which is the Conrad Hotel's bar there. When I actually started there, they hadn't built it yet. I was actually helping craft the bar with two other gentlemen. One was named Alan Moore, who was just like a phenomenal bartender. Like I learned so much from him. Started really exploring more on like the flavor sides of everything. And I was just like, I'm so interested in how alcohol works.
Yeah.
Like the whole like sensory development of things is just like add a splash of this and completely opens up and changes everything else that you mix it with. I'm like, this is just so cool. So as I was working at Lemwell's and bartending and like really honing in the craft there, I started hearing about this industry or this new distillery called Teeling's that opened up. It was the first distillery to open up in Dublin in like 150 years. So it was like a huge, huge deal. And like, I just kept going on tours and I'm like, this is so cool. And then eventually when I was like hanging out with one of my friends, he's like, oh, did you know that Teeling is hiring for tour guides? I'm like, obviously we should apply.
I've done that 100 times.
Right? I basically know the script at this point. So we both applied. He didn't get it. I did. And that's when I just like was like thrown into the world of distilling. I was talking to like their master distiller, Alice Chasko. I was talking to the other distillers. I was talking to the tour guides and like everyone was just so passionate about it. And I'm like, this is the greatest job ever. And then I started learning about whiskey barrels. And now I'm like such a nerd about whiskey barrels. I think it's so cool. I will literally go home and just watch videos about whiskey barrels. Like how much could you know about wood? But honestly, it's endless. So as soon as my
we only have an hour. So.
I'm sorry. That's part 2. So when I got home, like after my visa expired in Ireland, I came back here and I'm like, the only thing I want to do is distill. Like I was just so drawn to it. So that's when I found the Niagara College distilling program. It was their first year that they were launching. And I was like, you know what? They're going to have kinks. I'm going to wait till the second year. So I stayed in Toronto. I was working at some really great places. I was a general manager at R&D, which was a Master Chef's restaurant in downtown Toronto. Did the whole bar menu there as well. And then I ended up working at a place called Northwood, and they had a secondary location called Mulberry. And it's like time and time again, one of Now Magazine's like #1 bars in Toronto. Like they constantly win awards, and it's so cool. Their owner, Richard Pope, is like a phenomenal bartender and crafter and stuff like that. So it was really cool to work there. And then as I was waiting for the secondary year at Niagara College to open, I just applied and moved down to St. Catharines, did the program. And I'm like, this is what I meant to do. And that just was kind of the whole journey of it.
Yeah,
Sounds a very condensed version of it. But again, we have an hour.
There are things that we can break down if we want to.
Yeah.
But like you said, you might show this to your parents. So
right.
We got to keep it PG-13. Well, tell us a little about the whiskey barrels. What is it that drove you or grabbed you about it? Like the different styles.
Just
of
the
wood?
versatility of wood. Like one of the things I learned when I was working at Teeling's was you get 60% of the flavor of a whiskey from the wood and 100% of the color. Like most people, when you talk about whiskey, the first thing they think is like it's going to come off the still with that golden brown color, but it's clear.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, you're making vodka. I'm like, actually, I'm making whiskey. So
it doesn't look like whiskey.
Yeah, it's just like, it boggles people's mind. Even I was kind of blown away about it at first. But it's not even that. It's just there's like the molecules that are developed inside of it that give those flavors. So you get like hints of caramel and the vanilla, like from vanillin. And it's even down to like where the wood is coming from. So like you have oak trees all over the world, but each oak tree has a specific flavor. So you go into American oaks and that's where you're getting a lot more of that vanilla flavor. Where you go to a French oak and you get white pepper.
Right.
And I'm like, that is so cool.
Same tree.
Same tree. And then of course it depends on what you're getting inside the barrels as well. So like all these different red wine barrels or champagne barrels or brandy barrels and stuff like that. It's just like there's so much that you can do with a barrel.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling. Like the opportunities are endless. So like one of I'm just gonna throw it back to Teeling's is their single malt whiskey. Like unreal. Just unreal. It uses 9 different barrels.
Okay.
And it's just like this.
They just move it from barrel to barrel?
No, so that's another thing people get confused about. You're not actually moving the liquid, you're marrying them in.
Oh, okay.
So it's like if they have a whiskey that was sitting in a we'll call it a rum barrel for 9 years, and then they say they also have a 21-year-old brandy barrel mixed in with that. It's 2 different barrels that they've married together at different ratios. So it's a lot of what we do in Canadian whiskey as well. Like our big thing here is blending. We have just unreal people who were blending here. Like, of course, Dr. Don at Hiram Walker, known world over at this point. But like his blending capabilities are unmatched by so many people. I'm probably going to make a few people angry with that, but it's fine. Like, it's just like he's able to do so much with what he's got. Like Hiram Walker has umpteen amount of barrels.
Right.
And he's got to find the perfect barrels to match and blend into all these things to not only keep a consistent product line, but also to like elevate the product lines as well. So it's just one of those things that comes down to the barrels. Everything comes down to the barrels when it's in whiskey. And it's just so exciting.
So out of all of the spirits that you create, that you yourself distill, is whiskey your favorite, your forte?
I've actually had way more experience distilling vodka.
Okay.
It's not something that I thought I was going to end up doing in this because, like, of course, when I'm in college, me and all my classmates are like, I'm starting a whiskey distillery and it's going to be the greatest thing ever. Then we get out and we're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so hard to start a distillery. We have to wait so long for our whiskey to come out because we have a 3-year rule. And it's just like, now we're all kind of approaching that 3 years. So any of us that got a distillery job right out of the gate, our whiskeys will just be coming out now at the absolute base amount. So a lot of the ones that we've actually put out, like I recently did a rye with Wolfhead that was actually distilled by the previous distiller for 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
But like it was my chance to take different barrels and blend them all together. And I made this like amazing, like deep honey rich whiskey. So like that's my biggest whiskey that I put out. Anything else that I made at this point is sitting in barrels and I won't be able to taste for a few years. So it's kind of exciting to see like something I made so long ago is going to be coming out. But like as far as actually my favorite thing to make, it's botanical based spirits. So we're talking like Amaros and gins and my bitters lines that come out. Like I think it's really fun to play around with those things because it's just like the whiskey barrels. Like botanicals do so much and it's so crazy. Like there's little like tricks and nuances with it. So it's like cinnamon, for instance. If you have cinnamon in a spirit, you distill it, you let it sit for 3 days because your cinnamon's not going to be at its highest potency until it's been sitting for 3 days.
Oh, okay.
So if you taste it on the first day, you're like, oh, it's perfect. And you taste it on the third day, you're like, oh my gosh, it tastes like cinnamon. Yeah. So it's like crazy little things that you learn like that. I think that's like the botanicals are the whiskey barrels of gins.
Yeah,
so.
that's fantastic. Anybody who watched the first episode of Brew Talk, at the end of that episode, Tammy and I did get to taste a couple of your bitters.
Oh, stop. So exciting.
They were fantastic. And I think you brought some again today. So
I did for a little project review after.
So that's very cool. I guess what have you experienced in the field that working at all these different places? Because Wolfhead isn't the first place you've distilled at.
No, my first job out of college was BD's distillery out in Aislin, which is a potato-based spirit facility.
Okay.
Complete polar opposite to Wolfhead, not only in size and like distribution and stuff like that, but just the way that we actually create the spirits. Every distillery I'm going to work at for the rest of my life is going to do everything differently. So it's always like a brand new, like blank slate as soon as I get through that door. And I'll be moving on, unfortunately, again, in about 2 weeks to a new distillery up in Muskoka, which is going to be super exciting, and everything there completely different. Like all new stills, different equipment, different recipes, and the processes and stuff like that. Everything is different. So It's gonna be a challenge, but I'm pretty excited about that one too.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can touch on that a little bit if you'd like, or we don't have to. We can keep it on the DL.
Well, let me have my first day first.
That's true. Yeah. She gets fired before she even gets the job. All right, we won't send this to them.
Perfect.
We're going to leave that distillery unnamed.
Yeah.
Have you come across anything in the industry so far that has entirely changed the way that you want to do things? Being in the different places that you've worked at, something that is so knowledge, so known in the industry by all these different places, but you yourself being in the industry and the experiences that you've had went, why are we doing it this way when something, if we do it this way, and I don't want to take any secrets away either, keep those to yourself, but has anything changed you to the point where you are just look at it at a totally different, no longer textbook?
A lot of things here, especially in the craft distillery business in Ontario, is very off the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're super new to the industry as well. Like, obviously, we've been around like distilling and stuff for forever because Highmarker's been for forever.
Mm-hmm.
But on the craft side of it, it's only really boomed in the last 20, 25 years. So it is a lot of trial and error still. Mm-hmm. It's exciting to be joining into the industry so early on, I should say, because
Mm-hmm.
like when you go into Europe, when you're in like Spain or Ireland or England, and people who've been doing this for longer than Canada's been around, it's very traditional, very like, this is the way we do it. We have no room for error.
Mm-hmm.
Where in Canada, it's kind of like, oh, we did it this way this week, but what if we tried it this way next week and see what happens? We have a lot more freedom.
Sure.
And a lot more, I would say, loose rules
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to our spirits. So I think when it comes down to the actual processes of it, it's hard to say if I would change anything because like it's exciting to just trial and error at it.
Yeah.
As far as working environments, I definitely know what I want. And like having come from two family distilleries at this point, like I know, like there's the whole like stay in your lane thing. It is what it is, but it just depends on who you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
where you can kind of blur those lines.
Right.
But I think I need to know the biggest thing for me are the people I'm working with passionate about the industry? Because when you're working with somebody who's not passionate about it, it just, for lack of mind the pun, I was going to say it kills your spirit.
Yeah.
So, and it's just people get into this industry with such like a big dream and they're so excited about it and they think the navigation of it's going to be really easy and it's anything but. Not naming names, but like obviously Ontario is monopolized by certain businesses, whereas the rest of Canada has a lot more freedom and, they can go into like the private sectors and a lot of shipping and stuff like that. So we have our hurdles to overcome for, to kind of breeze over that. But I think because we have to work so much harder in Ontario as well to get known and get that commercial distribution, it's almost like you can make it in Ontario, you can make it anywhere, right? So like the whole like New York, London or LA thing. Yeah.
It's cool that it's such a new thing, this up and coming, the craft distilling, the small batch stuff, because you said being a part of the industry and getting into it when you did, you can almost carve your own path, like make a name for yourself as someone who's built, you've worked like, no one starts at the top, right? So, but being so young, present company excluded.
Yeah.
That's just really cool that you can kind of like find your product, your niche and build off of that. Yeah.
And like the other cool thing about it is just like, it's still a very male dominated industry over here. It's always going to be. But it's really great knowing that there's so many like strong female people in the industry right now, not only like around the world, but here in Canada, like Eau Claire Distillery in Alberta is female led and they are just killing it with everything. And it's cool to be able to be a part of that, like, like you were saying, like paving the way and stuff like that for new people to come out. So it's exciting. It's hard work. It's, pressure, but honestly, you can't make alcohol without pressure. So there you
go. You were a part of the Pink Boots Shut Up Rose project, were you not?
Yes.
So did you want to talk about that at all? And what did you said botanicals is the thing that you enjoy about it, and that's what you brought to the project, wasn't it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I have been like curating and working really, really hard on over my industry career is my palate. So especially when you're distilling, like the biggest thing you have on, you can read as many books and know everything, but the only thing that you need to make sure is working is your nose, because that is our greatest tool. Oh my gosh, I keep hitting your microphone. So one of the things that I wanted to bring into it, because like we tried to add a distillate into it, but like the distillate in the beer made it super boozy, and we wanted to make sure people could have more than one, because like if you drank half of one, you were like done for the night. So what I actually did was I took the hops that Pink Boots gave out to Tammy and did a little sensory analysis on them. So I did smells, I did tastes and stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend eating hops to anyone out there.
I also would not recommend that. I've
not
done
great.
It's awful. You don't taste anything for 3 days afterwards.
Yeah, it was and surprisingly sticky and oily. Oh my goodness. So I did like a little sensory on it, and I just I knew our main ingredient we wanted to go with was rose. So I also kind of built off the rose profiles and stuff like that as well to kind of create this botanical list that would go into the beer as well as match with rose and kind of amplify that flavor. As far as like the actual brewing and everything, it was super cool. I've never made beer before. And after watching the way that the fermentations are done there, I don't want to do it again because it just looks completely wrong to what I have to do in distilling.
Yeah.
Because like obviously that's where your flavor comes from. So like Tammy was telling me some of her beers ferment for a month. And I'm like, if mine isn't done in 4 days, it's a bad ferment. Like I don't know what to do with a month-long ferment. So it was really interesting to see that aspect of the industry because it's just so different to what I do.
Yeah.
Like if you had thrown me in a brewery, like just having been a distiller, I probably wouldn't know how to make a beer. Like I would just stare at it and be like, I can distill this later. It's fine.
That's right. Yeah, it turns out that I can distill it. I assume it would probably be the same as if you were to take a beer brewer and throw them in the middle of a distillery. They would be able to know how things kind of work, but at the end of it all, it's like, oh, did I make a beer? Yeah. It's the ingredients are similar.
Well, we start with the same ingredients, right? We start with like our malt or we start with our flours and stuff like that. And then we add in our yeast. Distillery, obviously huge on enzymes. I know some brewers out there are like, enzymes are an absolute sin to the beer. I have a friend who's a brewer who just refuses to use enzymes. It's just wrong. So like just our processing and our thought patterns when we're actually developing our product are so completely polar opposites because I don't care what my mash tastes like, honestly. Like I just want the most alcohol out of there.
That's right, yeah.
So that's where and then everything else I do just happens in the pod or happens in my whiskey barrels and stuff like that. So
yeah, your flavors come from the post fermentation, post work.
Yeah, like basically we fix it in post.
Yeah, fix it in post, which we're going to do to all your microphone bumps
Thank
there
you.
as well. So we can talk a little bit about your bartending history. You said you have won competitions around the world or just locally in Canada?
Both. Like obviously a lot of them were just like friendly competitions. Like in Ireland, I was doing things like speed rails and stuff like that. It's not anything like spectacular. The one goal I always had as a bartender is this is the year I'm going to go into world class. Like world class is the worldwide bartender competition. Basically names the best bartender in the world, and they spend a year just going around the world and talking about bartending. And like it was really exciting because when I was in Ireland, a girl from Vancouver actually won.
Okay.
And it was just a huge deal because they're like, oh my God, Canada keeps winning. Because it was the same year that Crown Royal Northern Harvest won best whiskey in the world.
Yeah.
And I remember all my Irish guy friends coming to me and be like, this is wrong. This is so wrong. How is Canada beating Ireland? And I was like, sorry guys, can't tell you. We just did it better this year.
That's right.
So so
for the infancy, we did better.
Exactly. Canada actually has a lot to play in like the world whiskey rules and stuff like that. Like we're actually the ones that invented the 3-year aging rule.
Okay.
That was a Canadian thing. And like Scotland and Ireland are going to take claim over that. But it was actually us, which I thought was really cool. But as far as like the competitions and bartending stuff, like the last one I did was just like another fun one at Niagara College. There's a huge dinner that happens every year there. Unfortunately, it didn't get to happen over COVID. I just managed to sneak in there right before COVID hit. They do something called Caps, Corks, and Forks.
Okay.
And it's because the culinary program at Niagara is so like renowned. The wine program is renowned. The beer program is renowned. So they do this little competition where the culinary students actually make a dish. And then the wine and the beer students do pairings.
Okay.
And then so you get a wine and a beer option with each course, and you have to pick which one goes better. And then there's winners. So this year, the year I did actually was the first year that they added in the distilling students, and they had a cocktail competition. So we had like the preliminary rounds in a class, and then the winners from that actually went to caps, corks, and forks, and then people would piece them and then write down which ones I like best, and I ended up winning.
Nice.
So that was just the most recent one. There's been a number of them, but they're just all years ago now. It feels like a lifetime ago.
If we don't talk about them, they're not that
I was
far
going to say,
away.
like, I think the only one I can remember is a Cadbury one that I did. And you had to use Cadbury chocolate in a unique way. So I actually made like a little chocolate egg. And it was the year that all that melting chocolate stuff was really, really popular. So I made the cocktail inside, I put the egg around it, and then I just melted the egg on top, and it like hit the rim of the glass. And I think I came in second. Because like the cocktail itself was like
Yeah.
but the performance of it was like really what sold the story. And I'm like, oh my god, it's amazing.
This egg is delicious.
So like they're so fun. And like I've always, like I was saying, I always wanted to go into the world class, but I just chicken out every single year because like I can't take the rejection of that, because it's been such a dream for so long that I just can't do it. It's gonna be like on my
If I don't
wish
win,
board
I'm
every
not
year.
doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I'm going in, I have to be number one. So.
Well, I feel you. You're talking about the 3-year wait on your whiskeys, and that is 100% the reason why I got into beer brewing, because I only got to wait 2 weeks. I don't gotta wait 3 years, and I don't even make it 2 weeks sometimes. Like I'm tasting flat beer out of the fermenter, and I'm like, yeah, this will do.
This week's episode of Brew Talk is brought to you by Erie Street Gastropub, located on the corner of Erie and Ellesmere in the heart of Little Italy in Windsor, Ontario. Erie Street Gastropub is serving up a constantly rotating list of craft beers, handcrafted cocktails, and a wide variety of Ontario wines. With plenty of seating, you can enjoy our delicious Asian fusion in our dining room, spacious patio, or in our private party room.
You've got cocktails all over the world that you have made, menus or cocktail drinks that you have created and got on different menus all over the world. You said you've enjoyed creating your own. You tell a story behind them. Each one is more than just the ingredients that go into it.
Yeah.
Is there any specific cocktail that does stand out for you as your golden cocktail?
I would say it's probably one that I have on the Lemuel's cocktail program. So basically, Lemuel, if you didn't know, is the first name of the guy from Gulliver's Travels.
Okay.
Which, who knew? Because the only story I know about Gulliver's Travels is when he goes to the island with all the little people. Turns out there's like a huge book about this. I don't know if anybody knows about this.
It's it's around. People have heard little things about it.
Snippets, right?
Yeah.
I just refer to the Jack Black movie. So, so in the book, like there's a whole bunch of different stories. Like he doesn't just go to this island of like little people. There's all these different islands he ends up hitting. Like there's I think it's Brobdingnan, like the bees and stuff like that. So our entire cocktail menu at Lemuel's is based on Gulliver's Travels.
Okay.
And if you look at the inside of the room and everything like that, like there's maps and globes and like all this stuff, like little nods and hints to it as well. It's super beautiful. So Alan Moore, the guy that I was working with there, he was the bar manager. He did like 99% of the cocktail menu, but then there's my one little cocktail on it. I loved it so much. It's called Off the Beaten Path, because it's kind of based on Gulliver himself as opposed to one of the stories, because like everything he did was off the beaten path. So I'm so proud of this cocktail. It was so beautiful too. So it's of course beetroot juice, fresh beets. I used gin and something called poitín. So poitín is an unaged whiskey.
Okay.
Very, very popular in Ireland. Very high proof. It's essentially a moonshine. But in Ireland, it has a whole bunch of different applications. Like the farmers used to make it out in the fields and stuff like that. And they would use it on arthritis and use them on the cow. So they would like take a little bit and like just rub it into the skin to eliminate like the pain and everything like that. But like obviously the high alcohol is just seeping into their bloodstream. It's fine. They're having a good time. So it's got poitín in it, beetroot juice, gin, raspberry syrup, green apple juice, orange bitters, and then I topped it with a pear and cardamom foam, because there is nothing better in the world than pear, cardamom, and beets. It's just so good. And then of course just did a little red beaten path on it with dehydrated beetroot, and it's just
I'm not sure if I'm hungry or thirsty.
right. It counts as one of your 5 a day for vegetables.
Perfect.
So
I will drink my vegetables. And that's still on the menu.
it's still on the menu.
Today.
Yeah, it's a complicated one to make because you have to like grind out fresh beetroot and fresh green apple juice, but it's a very high end cocktail bar, so they'll put in the efforts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if any of our Windsor, Essex County listeners find themselves in Dublin,
In Dublin.
go check out Aislin's Off the Beaten Path. Do you have any passion projects, things that you really just wish that you could throw all this aside, no money, no concern for anything, just like in the industry, if you wanted to stay with this, what would be your dream?
My dream, just living in the forest, picking berries and distilling. That's all I want to do.
Ooh, these ones are poisonous. I could distill
I can
that.
distill it. It's fine. It comes out. Fix it in post. Yeah. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about my time in Europe is just the quality of the liqueurs and stuff like that. And I find like a lot of the liqueurs here in Canada are just over the top sugar. They're syrupy. They're all that kind of stuff. And I just don't find that we have that quality here yet. It's definitely evolved and grown in the couple of years that I've actually been home from Ireland and stuff like that. But there was one brand out there called Brew Talk, made in France, and it is just phenomenal. Like phenomenal. Unfortunately, we can't get them in Canada unless you get through an agency, which is normally just reserved for like bars and restaurants and stuff like that. So if you're ever able to get a bottle of it, like just hold on to it for dear life. I just think that it's just such a wonderful brand because it's all like true flavor. It's not the flavor added into it. It's actually like they're distilling with the flowers and the baking spices and whatever it is that they're using. So I kind of want to emulate that here, but like on my own spin. Because my family's background is Icelandic on my dad's side. So I really want to pull in a lot of the Icelandic flavors that are out there. Because like Iceland's becoming more and more popular. So I really think that people would enjoy the true flavors of it. But the thing is with like Nordic people, they have a tendency to go for black licorice, which is not a huge flavor here. But like, honestly, like they have chocolate bars over there. It's literally like just milk chocolate, the black licorice through the middle of it. It's delicious. People just look at like, you're crazy. And like blueberries are a huge thing there, and rhubarbs and like all the like hardy fruits and stuff like that. The other cool thing is about Iceland is they have the geothermal greenhouses. So they actually grow bananas there.
Really?
You can go to banana groves in Iceland, which is crazy. So
cool,
it's like, I can take that and do Icelandic banana liqueurs and stuff like that. So I just find that whole world fascinating. And I really think there's an opportunity in Canada to start pushing that. So it's kind of, I have it in motion, but it's kind of not in motion because it's difficult to navigate. But like I could just spend my days making those and I don't even have to sell them. I just make them for myself.
That's right. Yeah.
Sit at home.
I can drink this banana.
Right? Just sit in a forest and drink banana liqueur.
Going back to the whiskey barrel conversation that we were having earlier, you're talking about how wood from all over the world, even though it's the same tree, creates such a diversity in flavors. There is just such a large diversity in the spirits alone based on the ingredient selection, the process, the machinery, the fermentation, the yeast chosen. If you want to pick apart some of the flavors, like for example, we've got the Wolfhead coffee whiskey here, the coffee liqueur, but you also brought a coffee liqueur that this is this like a secret home stash here.
Almost. It's actually my first commercial product that I put out with Beatties.
Okay.
Is a cold brew coffee liqueur. And I was just like coming off like the whole bartending thing is like literally my entire diet was coffee. So occasionally like a little bit of alcohol would slip into that when you're on your way to work.
Occasionally.
But listen, it happens. And I just find like with my Beatties one and with the Wolfhead one, we both set out with the same concept and the same idea. It's like we want a coffee liqueur. We went in completely different directions with it. And I just find it's so cool that everyone could have the same idea, but no one's going to have the same end result. Yeah. Right? I'm like, some of them are going to be good. Some of them are going to be bad. Some of them are going to be fantastic. And some of them are going to be undrinkable. It's all down to taste and like what you want to associate your flavors with. Right. So for instance, like mine, when I was putting it out there, I was like, I find again, like our liqueurs and stuff in Canada is super sweet and super syrupy, and like you could almost chew it instead of drink it. So my concept was I'm going to put out the cold brew coffee liqueur into the world that has the lowest sugar content that I could possibly find. So after spending hours and days of research of every coffee liqueur I could find in the world, I'm not going to name brand names, but like I found like one of the more popular ones has 14 grams of sugar per ounce.
That's a lot of sugar.
That's a lot of sugar. So I wanted to do just a fraction of that. So the one that I actually put out with Beatty's has 5.7 grams of sugar per ounce.
Okay.
And the way I kind of combated the spiciness and the hotness from the alcohol that's in it is I made a demerara sugar to go into it instead of just using like a sucrose syrup. Because then I could use a really rich flavor at just a fraction of the amount. And I picked that up from bartending.
Okay.
Right. So I'm able to bring in a few of my little tips and tricks from the bar trade to create spirits that I actually enjoy. And I'm not, like it's not a guilty pleasure anymore. Like I can just sit and drink this and not feel bad about it because people probably put more sugar in their coffee in the morning than they do in this actual spirit.
I'd like my liqueur a double.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the amount of people out there who want to make a double cream liqueur, it's crazy. Because like of all the co-packing is when you have a virtual distillery because you don't have your own brick and mortar. It's very, very expensive to start your own brick and mortar distillery. It's super popular in Canada now. Like it's just blown up in the last couple of years, especially with COVID. Everyone's been sitting at home. Now, like
drinking.
Now that we're out and people are like, I can make that myself, but like can't make it themselves. They just hire somebody else to do it for them.
Right.
So they'll actually come up with the recipe, they'll buy the ingredients, and they just give it to the person with their process or their SOP and be like, make this product for me. So we do. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the cold brew coffee liqueur from Beatty's. And it's really funny because like after moving into Wolfhead, we had very similar processes. It's a 24-hour cold brew. We do the whole effects to take out the dextrins and stuff like that to make sure it's not got that cloudiness. I liked having a little bit of the crema left in my coffee liqueur because it makes it feel more authentic. I understand how a lot of people wouldn't like that because they're like, oh, there's something floating in here. But I'm like, it's just crema. It's coffee.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how you know it's legit, right?
It's the real thing.
Yeah. I spent ages and ages like picking at the vanillas and the flavors that I wanted to add into it. So kept it 100% natural, made the sugar syrup myself. And I did this 100% myself.
It's got a fantastic aroma.
It smells like fresh brewed coffee, doesn't it? Yeah.
That sweetness that's in there is just enough though too. Like you can feel it in the nose. It's almost like I can smell that sweetness in the back of my This is very good. Oh, well, we got to do a side by side.
Yeah, we got to do side by side. So I'll pour you a little bit of the Wolfhead coffee.
I'm going to be a neutral party in this.
I love this. Like there's been a bottle of this in my home bar since I've been there. It's a staple now in my bar.
It's one of the more popular ones.
It is. We're actually really proud of this because we outsell some of the bigger brands here in the Windsor, Essex area. We outsell them with our coffee liqueur.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to name names because, got to stay nice and neutral.
Right. The coffee liqueur is definitely something that I have seen on every bar of every friend's house that I've been to. Like like you said, it's a staple. It's a staple in the area. Wolfhead being local, everyone wants to support local, and this being one of the more outstanding things that Wolfhead puts out, there's no surprise.
Yeah, no, like every time I make a batch, like I'm just excited about it. Like we make it a lot because obviously our bigger seller. It just flies out the door, but like it's still
the diversity on the two though. You're right. Like the process is being very similar, even down to the color. You said the cremas.
Yeah, so I kept the crema so you have that like thickness to it, like a fresh brewed coffee. Whereas we filter out the cremas in here to make sure we have a consistent, clear product.
Right.
And we even different coffee types. So the Wolfhead one actually uses a Costa Rican coffee, so it's very nutty. Whereas I went with Nicaraguan, so we get more of that like dark cherry and fruitiness with it. So
I'm gonna clear my palate with a sour.
But like, yeah, even the side by side, the color completely different, the smell completely different, but the exact same concept.
This is my favorite part of the episode. When we get to sit around and drink and everyone gets to listen to us smack our lips.
There's your ASMR.
There's your ASMR for the day. That's wonderful. They're both very good.
Yeah, it's like there's not one that's better than the other.
Yeah.
They're just different.
Yeah, they are.
Different.
And they're
Same
very
concept, different.
Very different. Especially on the nose. I feel like the nose is the biggest trigger for the difference to me, because when I take a sip, it's still that liqueur. I still get that coffee flavor. But the nose is such a different nose palette. I don't know. My nose palette.
Well, like the other thing is that you have to remember, like 90% of your taste is actually coming from your nose.
Right.
So this is why it's so important for me to protect my nose. I can't blow it out with like flavors or anything like that. It's really funny. I was explaining to somebody at work the other day about how I do the production, and they're like, "How do you know when we're supposed to do our cuts and stuff like that?" And I'm like, "It's my nose."
You smell it.
And they're like, "You don't do like time or temperature or anything like that?" I'm like, "Nope." Like a lot of people can, like when you have it so regimented that it's very consistent across, but like because in craft distillery, a lot of factors play into this. And I rely on my nose all the time. So I can tell the exact moment I need to cut, but it's just like you push it and you push it and push it. So I have to stay in routines. So it's like the days I'm distilling, I can't have milk in my coffee. Like I have to like keep everything super neutral. You can't wear perfumes. You can't do any of this stuff. You go in absolutely fresh.
Yeah.
Because like if I went in and I'd been drinking coffee and stuff like that, or have gum or something in my mouth, like nothing works.
That changes everything.
Yeah, it changes everything. Yeah. So like if I had minty gum or something like that, like I'm not gonna be able to smell like this molecule or like this ester or congener or whatever. So it's
when you work with something every day, you get used to it, right? It doesn't matter what your job is, but if you're so, and especially when you have passion and you really want to push yourself to become better at something, you can have the distiller who just follows the system and cuts when he cuts, and you're wasting product. But for you who wants to produce a better product, you get so used to your system and your, like you said, your nose to just be able to do it. Like that's real skill. That's passion. To be able to just do it, right? Without having to rely on.
Yeah. And because a lot of what I do is fairly monotonous. Like if you're working in vodka distilleries, like you're making vodka all the time and it's the exact same thing. And you're always going for that neutral flavor. So you're like, when you get the option to work with other products like whiskeys or gins or whatever it is, like it's almost exciting.
Yeah.
So that's when you actually get to put yourself to the test and be like, okay, like let's see if I can find this flavor. And like I do a lot of like workshops off to the side, like nosing for faults and stuff like that, and reaching out to other people to be like, hey, like how do you detect this? How do you detect this? So you really have to make sure that you have like connections and people in the industry who and like can trust that are able to pull out these things so that you can learn how to do it yourself.
Absolutely.
So it's like an ever growing, ever learning kind of thing. Like,
and that's crazy. How you get better at it. You can't just sit back and okay, my nose is perfect and I'm gonna distill every day and I know what smells like what. But to push yourself to contact other people and say, hey, even though I'm already successful and I've learned it, I want to push myself. Give me something new to train my nose on, or my flavor, my palate, anything, right? Absolutely. So.
Yeah. So like one of the new ones that I was teaching myself is butyl alcohol, which smells a lot like cheesy vomit. Yep. So that one, you try to push off to the very end. So it's the last thing you learn. But honestly, I just wanted to get it over.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Smell this. Never again. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
I hope that I don't have to ever smell this ever again.
Well, I mean, like I have a sample of it back in my distillery. So.
Okay. I'm a beer brewer, remember? I don't need to know these flavors. Yeah. It's okay. One of the other things that I would like to touch on here on Brew Talk is we've gotten a lot of responses from the last episode. There was a shout out to our favorite four-legged friends. I think all of us just in this industry, if we don't have kids, and even those of us that do have kids, pets are the new biggest thing. And so we gave a shout out to my dogs, Vera, Magic, and Silly, and Tammy's dog, Boomer. But you've got a very lovely, handsome young man that I'm sure you would like to talk about.
He's probably the best dog in the world. So I have a little dog named Bruce. Mm-hmm. He is a Beagle Corgi mix. They're called Beagies. I always been calling them Borgles, but apparently that's something else. So yeah, he's a little Beagie. I got him last year. At 8 years old. He's my first dog I've ever owned, and I'm just so obsessed with him. I never thought I could love a dog so much. He's just the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like I love him so much. He was a COVID adoption. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he was given up by his previous owners. He had one previous owner. They had kids during COVID, so they gave him up, and I'm a little bit mad at them because I'm like, how do you have a dog for 8 years who is as spectacular as Bruce and just give him up? But honestly, like they're lost. Like he's all mine now.
That's right.
So, and he's living his best life.
You give him nothing but. I follow you on Instagram. And I don't know that I follow you or if I follow Bruce.
Honestly, at this point, the line is very blurred. So.
Is it booze or is it Bruce?
Yeah, pretty much.
Tell me your whiskey antidote.
Okay, so before I moved to Ireland, I hated whiskey. I thought it was the most foul thing ever because my dad was a huge Scotch drinker and like he loved like the super peated, like you have Lefroy in the house. I could smell it in my hair for 3 days even if I'm in the shower.
It's like a campfire.
Oh, I just couldn't do it. And like my sister started getting into Scotch too, and she really liked the peated stuff. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with you people. And like it's really funny because like before I even moved to Ireland, I wasn't a big drinker. Like I was in the cocktail industry and stuff like I was just I'd have like maybe a glass of wine. And now I finish a whole box by myself in a night. So don't put that in.
Judgment-free zone.
So yeah, before I even moved there, like I didn't really like whiskey and all that sort of stuff. So I got to Ireland and I went down to Cork. I had a weekend off from work, so I just went down to Cork on my own. And ended up meeting this guy named Shane, who's actually still one of like my really good friends. I'm gonna go visit him in Israel very soon, so I'm pretty excited. But yeah, so I got down there. I met Shane, and he gave me like a whole little tour of Cork City, and like was taking to me all these places. And I had like my first pint of Beamish and Murphy's and all that stuff. And we went to one bar and he's like, oh, like what whiskey do you want? I'm like, sorry, like I'm not a whiskey drinker. And he's like, you live in Ireland, you're drinking whiskey. And I was like, okay, like I don't know what to tell you. Like maybe like a Jameson. Like I don't know. Like I'm in Ireland. Let's go with Jameson. And he's like, listen, just sit in the booth. I will go order this for us. So I sat down, he scampered off to the bar and he ordered some drinks and came back and he had 2 glasses of whiskey in his hand. He put it down in front of me. And I went to go have a sip and he's like, no, we're waiting for the food that I ordered. And I was like, well, I'm not like that hungry, but like, okay, like just let me drink this. So we waited a couple minutes and then a bowl came out and had like these giant looking puffed up tortilla chips. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I looked at it and he's like, all right, have a sip of your whiskey. And so I had a sip of it and I put it to my tongue and I'm like, oh my God, this is what whiskey is supposed to be like? This is the greatest thing I've ever had. And he's like, okay, now eat some of the food and then have another sip of the whiskey. So I took a bite of like this strange chip and it was like this salty, crunchy thing. And I was like, okay, like it's good. And I had another sip of the whiskey and I'm like, oh my God, like this just got better. Like, what is happening? Like there's all these flavors and stuff. And I'm like, what am I drinking? And he said, Middleton Very Rare. And it is still to this day my all-time favorite whiskey. Of course, it is the most expensive bottle of whiskey you get. It's like 250 euros. So that's like $300 Canadian or more, like depending on exchange. But oh my God. And then that just kind of spiraled me into whiskey. After that, I tried every whiskey I could find. I went to every country that had whiskey and I'm like, just give it to me. Just give me the whiskey.
Constantly chasing that elephant. Yeah. And you're never going to find it ever again.
Oh my God. It was just unreal. And it turns out that this giant tortilla was deep fried pig's ears. And I'm like, that's what I give dogs.
This is what Brucey gets.
Oh my God. But it was delicious. Deep fried pig's ears and whiskey.
You're going to start giving Bruce some whiskey now?
There's actually dog beers out there. Did you know that?
I did not.
There's dog beer, dog wine, and dog ice cream.
Well, I know who I'm getting on my next episode.
Right? But yeah, that just like sent me into my whole whiskey world. And it's not stopped since. And so actually, I didn't talk about this either. Like I have my Irish whiskey accreditations. I have my Scotch whiskey accreditation. So like technically like an expert, but like, yeah, I can't stop. I just think it's the most fascinating thing. And I'm like, I literally have spiraled out of control with whiskey. Like not necessarily just drinking it, but like just needing to know more about it.
Right.
And now like I've started getting into like Japanese whiskeys. Taiwan is like going to be setting out crazy amounts of whiskey in the next couple of years. India is going crazy with whiskeys and rums and stuff like that. Like their whole distilling industry is just booming right now.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. And it all started with a man from Cork making me eat pig's ears and drink a glass of whiskey. Oh my gosh.
So in front of us here, you have brought a selection of items that you're going to craft us a cocktail.
Yes.
With your fantastic skills.
One of the things I really like about this industry is that there's so much crossover. But one of the things that I feel like people are really scared of, especially here in Canada, beer cocktails. Beer cocktails are fantastic. Like they're refreshing, they're kind of low alcohol, but like there's so much you can do with beer. Like a lot of the times you see like people pairing like a shot of whiskey with a beer or like with wines and stuff like that. Of course, we have a lot of the barrel exchanges, but I just all summer I'm drinking beer cocktails. So I'm really excited to make me and listeners.
We're going to make you a beer cocktail that I'm going to drink.
Oh my God, Emmy. So I'm actually going to make one of my favorite ones that I've ever had in my life using one of our Pilsners here and my Aperol on the side here. So it's going to be a little bit bitter, a little bit bright. I've got some honey to kind of sweeten it up. This is actually one that I learned in Ireland and kind of brought it back with me here and kind of did my own little tweaks on it. Originally, I was actually making it with Cameron's lager, which because I love the Captain's Log. Like it is so good. So I called it the Cameron's Kick. So now we're going to change it a little bit because now we're going to be using Erie Street Pilsner.
Yes.
Street, yes.
Oh, well, it's Erie Street is the one that supplied our Pilsner, but it is from Bellwood's Brewery.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Erie Street themselves, they are not a brewery. They are a tap room, if you will. They've got 25 different beers on tap that are constantly rotating, plus an entire fridge full of different cans from all over Canada, all over Ontario. And they're fantastic as far as their selection. The food is fantastic. It's all homemade. Husband and wife couple that run the place, and the food is outstanding. So check them out before you leave town.
100%. Honestly, like anyone that carries Bellwoods has like a customer in me. So. I love Bellwoods so much, especially like we used to go down to like Bellwoods Trinity Park and stuff like that in Toronto, just hang out, have a couple beers, bring the dogs and just watch them play. Oh, great time. So this is a really, really simple cocktail.
Okay.
I'm going to start off with some lemon juice here. You always want to start with your cheapest ingredient because if you mess up, you can just throw it out. So we're going to start off with lemon juice. It's just going to be, I'm going to make this for both of us. So I'm going to do a double. So it's a 3/4 ounce of lemon juice. So that makes it 1.5 ounces. Normally I use real lemons, but I bought this for a special occasion.
Right.
So.
Would this be the special occasion?
This is the special occasion.
I feel special. Thank you for being here.
Next, we're going to add in a little bit of honey just to balance out that tartness from the syrup, my goodness, the lemon. Usually you want to do it just slightly under because you still want that like lemony punch. But so I would do maybe 1/2 ounce each. So we're just going to do 1 ounce for the two of us here.
I love this ASMR of our clinking and the suction of the honey juice.
Try to really make it an interactive experience here.
Right.
Then we're going to bring out a little bit of grapefruit juice. Just to kind of give it a little more depth, a little more excitement in here. And it's really going to play well with the Aperol that's a little bit bitter. So because I have honey on this side, I'm just going to do double on that one. So we're going to do 1 ounce of grapefruit juice each. This is really hard to do sitting down. So.
No problem.
Oh my goodness. Shaky hands.
That's okay.
Trust me, I have been bartending before.
You know,
it doesn't look like it here.
the same goes for every episode of Brew Talk. I'm sure both of us worked a full work day today.
Oh, it was a big day today.
And being in the alcohol industry, I'm sure
there might have been a glass of wine before
there might
I
have
got
been a glass, yeah. I may have had a beer or two before I got here too. So.
Oh, perfect.
I would expect nothing less.
It was the nerves, right?
That's right. So. Yeah. I would expect nothing less from those of us who do this for a living. Product testing, right? You got to make sure that stuff that's going out, exactly. We're training our palates.
We're training the palates. Ever growing, ever learning. So we're just going to do 1 ounce of Aperol for each.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do a little shameless self-promotion here and throw in some of my Wolfhead citrus bitters.
Absolutely. Now, Tammy, who brought this citrus bitters on our last episode, was supposed to bring on some information about that. And I think she said she forgot everything that you wrote down for her.
I texted that to her.
So if you'd like to tell us a little bit about this, now would be the time.
Now is the time. So I really wanted to focus on not just like an orange bitters or lemon bitters or whatever it is. I wanted to make it a very blanket citrus. So I brought in a little bit of everything. So in this one, I actually have caramelized orange. I have lemon. I have grapefruit. I have pomelo. And then I tried to bring out a little bit of an herbal essence to it. It's herbal essence, just like the shampoo. So I added in a little bit
sponsor.
Sponsor us. So I put in a little bit of cardamom because nothing goes better with citrus than cardamom. What else did I put in there? There's a little bit of orris root, and there is some, I don't even remember my own ingredients.
Tammy's going to test you
that was
now.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
that was it. Okay. So there's a lot of citrus, a little bit, the orris root really comes in and uses it as a binder, especially when you're making things like bitters and botanical based spirits. You want something to bind the flavors together. Otherwise, it sounds weird, but they are going to break apart. So without the orris root, what would happen is like the orange and everything would just dissipate into the background and you would just lose it. And then it just kind of tastes like a hodgepodge of nothing. With the orris root or things like angelica root, it binds them together. So you get that like constant stick of you just imagine like Velcro balls of molecule flavors all stuck together. Yeah. So it just kind of keeps it really consistent and shelf stable.
That's awesome. And you're going to put 1 or 2 splashes of the citrus bitters into there?
I already did, but I'm always happy to put more.
Oh, yeah.
So
I love bitters. Yeah. Give me a little bit more.
I could literally drink this stuff.
That's right.
And I might have before. You know, people have hard days. You have nothing in the shelf.
I'm just going to
go to your bitters. So yeah, we're just going to shake this all up now.
All right.
Get a little more of that honey in there. We did bring ice. I think we brought some
We
ice.
do. Yeah. It's in your bag there. Yeah. We're very organized here on Brew Talk. It's only our 2nd episode. Production value will increase as time goes on. We will have a bowl of ice ready to go.
One of those champagne holders.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
And we won't be doing it savagely like this either.
Yeah.
We'll have clips and...
We have a couple glasses here. So I'm just going to put some ice in our glasses as well to get them nice and chilled.
Absolutely.
Our 2 cups. Brought to you by Wolfhead Distillery.
There we go.
I promise I'm way more graceful than this usually.
Like you said, you're sitting down. There's a microphone in front of you.
I'm just worried about hitting things here. All right, so we're just going to shake her all up.
Give us that microphone shake. If that doesn't get us viewers, I don't know what will.
Get that drip going. You got to show off to the customers,
Absolutely.
right? And then we're just going to strain some of this into our cups. Get a really nice summery orange color from our grapefruit and the Aperol.
That is a very nice looking beverage. And now we
can top it with just a few ounces of the Pilsner. I usually keep it around 3 to 4 ounces of the beer.
Okay.
Depending on how hard my day's been. Yeah.
So all of the beer.
All of the beer. And it also gives it like a really nice foam. I know that was a terrible pour, but
That's okay.
It gives it that really nice beer foam on top. So you almost get like that full experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just going to add a little bit of garnish to it as well. You know, it's a cocktail. We got to zhuzh it up here.
If you don't garnish my cocktail, why am I even here?
Using the official Brew Talk knife and cutting board that have not been sharpened.
Well, we need to have a speak with our producer here. Next week's episode, we will talk about sharpening knives. We will have someone on here showing us how to sharpen a knife.
The importance of tool maintenance.
Because what is a crafter without proper tools?
Oh my gosh, I'm a little bit nervous about cutting myself here, so thank God we have paper towels.
Right.
You know what? I'm just going to make it one garnish.
That's
Normally
fine.
I would do something really fancy, but you know, we only have an hour.
And this knife is scary.
And it's a little terrifying. So I always like to get a little bit of that spray, get the oils going on my zest here, give a little swirl, and pop that baby in.
Very nice.
Here you go. Do the same for myself. I definitely want to drink this. Been dreaming about it all day.
Our day hasn't been that hard. What are you talking about?
No. Cheers.
Well, cheers. Thanks for being on the episode. I appreciate you coming out. And that's lovely.
Refreshing, right?
That is very refreshing. I could drink that all day long.
And it just gets boozier the more that you let it sit. Because, like, of course, the beer sits on the different densities in it. So we have like that heavy sugar and Aperol flavors on the bottom. The beer just sitting on top. So as you drink it, it's mixing itself up, and you have that like really beautiful, like,
of course, you can almost see the
kind of
separation. I don't know if that's picking up on the camera, but you can see that separation in there. And as you said, the more you drink it, they blend together. So it's almost like you start with one drink and you finish with another.
Right? 2 drinks in one.
2 drinks in
Efficiency.
one. Well, Aislin, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. I appreciate you bringing all of these things to taste, even though we only tasted one of them. We do have to drive home. So.
Yeah, that's true.
And plus, there's Brew Talk after dark here. So I know you are moving on to bigger and hopefully better things. But if you are ever find yourself in the Windsor area again, I would love to have you back on. We can talk about maybe more of where your future is leading you, and we can hear about the new job. And at one point in time, we would like to get out and have the whole crew that did the Pink Boots collaboration, and just sit down and talk to everyone about that as maybe a shorter episode. So maybe we can tie that into
that'd be fantastic.
Having on. So once again, thanks for being on Brew Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Erie Street for supplying us with the sponsorship for the episode. Thank you to Wolfhead once again for sending out the samples that we had today. And thank you for Bruce for being the lovely gentleman that he is.
The love of my life.
The love of your life. And
Perfect. Cheers.
That is good.
Are we done?
Hey, we're done.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just going to sit here and drink this now.
Right?
Right?